So I'm going to talk about quality improvement and how you engage staff through quality improvement. And as referenced at the beginning, I work in Western Sussex. We're fifth year into working in Western Sussex. And over the past year, we've also been working in Brighton and Sussex University Hospitals under a management contract to lead that organisation. So we'll touch on that towards the end. But really, we kind of started, I'll go back in a minute. We started our thoughts about this about over 3 years ago, nearly 4 years ago, when Western Sussex was in a good place. It was a stable organisation, all the metrics were pretty good, and the staff survey was good, and we were delivering, but recognised that if we didn't do something different, then it was going to become increasingly difficult to stay ahead of the game and be a really top organisation. So we spent a lot of time as an exec team learning from others. We spent a lot of time together reflecting on best evidence of how to improve organisations, how to have an improvement culture that was your main business. Spent some time abroad with Virginia Mason, spent some time exploring other models of care, and came back with the idea that we needed to do something different. And we needed to put improvement at the heart of our delivery system, rather than something you did when you had a bit of spare time, and stop the firefighting and move to sort of more proactive management. And really it came down to how do we make life better for our staff at the front line, because we know the line between engaged staff and patient outcomes is strong and direct. And we also know that frontline staff have got the key to most of the problems. We believe that 80% of improvement comes from things that sit at the front line. Transformation's got a place, big strategic projects have got a place, but the majority of improvements come from frontline staff if you give them the right direction, the right tools, and the right support to do so. We still get coached in our improvement efforts, so we get executive coaching to help us carry on with this improvement journey. And the coach, Kim Barnes, Chief Executive of Theda Care, always wants me to take her out onto the ward. And the reason she wants to go to the ward is to make sure that there's not a gap between what I think's happening and what's actually happening. So that frontline presence, as you talked about, is really important. I kind of want to talk about our Patient First programme. So Patient First is, if anybody has been to VM, you'll recognise this as a blatant steal from Virginia Mason, and we kind of just steal things that work well and adapt them locally. But this is our strategy on a page. And the importance about this is you can articulate it to staff. So if you want empowered, engaged staff, you've got to be able to tell them what it is you're trying to do. So strategy on a page, patient at the top, some visions and values, and some key strategic themes of sustainability, people, our people, quality improvement, and systems and partnerships. But it's fine having a strategy, but you need to have a method to deliver it. And what we learned from time working with others was our method. And we've got a very structured method of quality improvement. It's our Patient First Improvement Programme. I don't have time to talk about the detail of it, but in essence, it's got 5 pillars. Many people that do quality improvement stop at 3 of these pillars. You do some projects, you do some capability building, you develop green belts, yellow belts, whatever, and then you recognise that you need to wrap an improvement office or a Kaizen office round about it to support it. And if you do that, you get some kind of improvement, but actually it tends to fizzle out over time because you haven't actually embedded it and hardwired it into the organisation. The missing pillars, and the ones that we learned that were really important, were 2. One, strategy deployment. That's about being really key, really clear about organisational objectives, breaking them down to what's important for divisions, directorates and wards. So you've got that line of what's important from a ward right up to the board. But the big one and the middle one, and the one that the HCA was talking about, is the Patient First Improvement System. This is a lean management system which is unit-based, which takes 5 months to train wards in, but it's about doing daily continuous improvement, daily improvement huddles, leader standard work, process confirmation, a real structure of how you hardwire improvement into day-to-day business. That's at the front line. The thing we learned as an exec team was actually how we behave is really important, and if we don't behave properly, we'll underpin that altogether. So how as an executive you behave has to really change, and how as senior leaders in the organisation has to change. Because what got most people to where they are today is a bit of a heroic management style, a bit top-down, a bit kind of old hat really. And it might be a bit difficult to change, but if you're going to do this quality improvement and empowering frontline, you need to be doing some of these things. The visible, accessible, responsive goes without saying. The next line is really important to me. So lean and quality improvement isn't about tools. Tools come last. We had the director of quality improvement from Lego come to our staff conference, and the best quote I've heard, and the one that stuck with me forever, is a fool with a tool is still a fool. So tools don't actually help per se. What you need to have is the mindset that you're going to do this, the skill set, and that's a behaviour skill set, and then on top of that comes the tools. So that's the kind of order that we need to do it. You heard from Mary about the importance of being in the front line. We call it Gemba time, and having Gemba time, but having Gemba time with purpose is really important. There's no point having a royal visit. You know, staff don't recognise a royal visit. You've got to be there with a purpose. And this improvement system gives us a purpose to engage with staff, to talk about improvements, to coach, and to help move things on. And it turns you into a coach as a leader rather than a teller. So you've got to be curious. And the famous quote that I love, it's a lean quote, but is you've got to have big eyes, big ears, and a small mouth. You've got to be curious and listen and coach and support staff. So if you've got it at the front line and you've got executives behaving it, the missing bit often is what you do with middle managers. And if you don't do something different with middle managers, they get disenfranchised and they get a little bit spiky. And we've got to build a system that gets it going from ward to floor. So we've got frontline improvements going on, patient-first system, we've got executive behaviours, and we take that strategy deployment pillar and we line that up through executives, divisions, directorates, ward managers, so that we have a series of behaviours that everybody is plugged into improvement. I'll talk about the rest a bit later. Leadership's not just an executive function, it's not just a divisional function or a director function, it's every level. So this is what happens every day in our wards that go through the patient first improvement system. 15 minutes, the ward stops, subject to nothing untoward happening. And there's a 15-minute improvement huddle. It can be chaired by anybody because there's standard work to underpin it. And for 15 minutes a day, people work on problems. They advance problem tickets on the board, they talk about the problems, they prioritise it. They're working on 3 quick wins. They have PDSAs for bigger problems, and they've got an escalation route for problems that can't be resolved in their own area. I guess the bottom line is, how do you want to engage staff, and how do you want to draw that line between engagement and patient outcomes? This is some hard data. So when you go through a patient-first improvement system, this is the kind of bump that you can see, and do staff feel as though they can be involved in making improvement suggestions? Are they involved in change? And engagement scores go up significantly in those areas as well. That's great, engagement's great, but we need to turn it into hard outcomes for patients as well. And here's just a graphic of some of the work with falls. But over the last year, there were 350 less patients fell in Western Sussex than there was the year before because of this kind of system. I mentioned, I've got 30 seconds or so, I mentioned that we're also working in BSUH now, an organisation that's different, it's in a different place. It's really quite a challenged organisation. And we've been there a year, we've done quite a lot of stuff, so we're quite busy. And a lot of it's the basic sort of building blocks, but we're now layering on top of that this improvement system. And A&E is one of the first units to have gone through that. There's some hard outcomes. Here's some process things that have changed. Improvements in hemolyzed bloods, improvements in turnaround times, improvement in assessment times. But we had a CQC engagement event last month in ED, and the inspectors were really generous. They came and they talked to the staff a lot. And the comments were, this feels like a different organisation. Staff feel empowered to make change. They can see what they're trying to do because there's a line from top to bottom. They've got tools to do it. They've got methods to do it. And more importantly, that they feel as though they're not alone anymore. They've got an executive and a leadership team that support them in doing it. So I think with a very structured improvement methodology and some leadership behaviours, you can make very big and significant differences, not only in stable organisations, but in organisations that are somewhat more challenged as well. So thank you very much.